Hockey Talk Show on this Monday, December 11th. Thanks for being here with us wherever you're watching from on Facebook and YouTube Live. Certainly do appreciate it. If you're downloading the podcast on Stitcher, iTunes, or the TuneIn Radio app, thanks so much for doing that. Remember to rate and review. That's how we climb up the charts on the whole podcast world. Should be an interesting show on tap this morning. As you can tell from the title of the program, we are going to be talking about the Islanders and their arena situation. I think we'll have a special guest with us too, Randi Marshall, reporter for Newsday. I think we're going to hook up with her in a couple of minutes here to talk about the logistics of what's going down with the Belmont arena situation. It certainly is exciting for Islander fans. They have gone through this, it feels like just, a year or so ago with the Barclays Center, but they are going to be going through it again, of course. Your calls at 631-438-1768. Jump in on the YouTube or Facebook chats. Or remember to hit the like button and share it around if you can. Great to be here with you. Talking hockey on the Hockey Talk Show on a Monday. A great week of action for sure in the National Hockey League. We do have a couple of other little things to go over on the program today, which we will, of course, delve into. But our main focus on tonight's show is definitely going to be the Islanders arena situation with Belmont Park and what really is involved with that. If you have questions for myself or Randy on the Isle situation, by the way, how it affects the New York Rangers, what it's going to do to affect the Seattle group. Remember, Oakview group is the same group that's going through this with Seattle and the arena, I should say, that just got approved over there in the Pacific Northwest. So we got to talk about that impact as well, expansion, the whole 9 yards, how it all kind of ties in to the show. So our good, I shouldn't even say good buddy. I honestly don't know Randi all that well, other than the fact that I'm a fan and have been following her for quite some time on social media, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook, and her Twitter is just downright amazing. The Islanders and the only other real competitor that is in the mix for the Belmont redevelopment area, they had this open RFP meeting last night, which from what I understand is not really a common thing. And Randi was there along with the rest of the team over at Newsday, who really are the only full-time newspaper that cover the Islanders anymore. I mean, Daily News, and they'll all write some stuff, but as far as having like a beat reporter goes, I believe Newsday is the last newspaper to be covering the team. So they were there at that meeting, which was pretty significant. And we will certainly get into that and talk with Randi about that just in a mere few moments here. So stay tuned for Randi. Like I said, questions and comments in the Facebook and YouTube chats would be great. Anything you want to talk about. Plenty to talk about all throughout the league, and we'll touch on it here relatively quickly. Jaden Schwartz to miss at least 6 weeks with this right ankle injury. Tough for number 17 of the Blues here, having a hell of a year for the Blue Notes. I mean, really just doing a phenomenal job. 35 points, 14 goals, 21 assists in this early season. Between Jaden really coming alive and Braden Shen coming into this team and the impact that he has had on the St. Louis Blues, it's been an exciting time to be a Blues fan right now in the city of St. Louis. You look at where they are in the standings right now, atop the Central Division with 44 points, a 4-point lead on the Nashville Predators, which is kind of hilarious because that is really considered, with how tight the league is right now, 4 points is like, might as well be like, 10 lengths in a race, a racetrack. It's unbelievable. Everything else is so tight. Nashville 1 point above Winnipeg. Los Angeles has a 4-point lead on Vegas, who has a 4-point lead on San Jose in the Pacific. The Atlantic, Tampa only has a 3-point. As great as Tampa has been playing, and as much as the Leafs have been struggling, Tampa only has a 3-point lead on the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. And Toronto and Boston, there's a 9-point difference there. So that would be the biggest difference. And of course, then you look at the Metro Division and the rest of that whole mess. The Devils have the last spot with 36. It goes Columbus 39, Washington 37, the Devils 36, Isles, Pittsburgh with 35, the Rangers with 34, and the Canadiens with 30. Carolina right behind them, and Philly with 29. I mean, it's so tight no matter where you look. So it is definitely going to be an exciting holiday season for the National Hockey League, and it is going to be an exciting run once the calendar flips over to 2018. Speaking of holiday season, we've just updated the sales that we have in the Hockey Talk Show store. Not really our store, but our little affiliation with the NHL shop, up to 30% now. So if you're thinking about buying a loved one a great hockey gift, 30% off in the Shop NHL store right now. Click the links below in the Facebook and YouTube channels, and you'll be taken right over to the page where you'll get that 30% off courtesy of the Hockey Talk Show. So kind of cool. We're ramping up. Even that's ramping up. Even the sales are ramping up right now over here with the National Hockey League. Again, click that exclusive link that we got for you there in the link below, and we'll take you over to save 30% on your favorite National Hockey League gear. Also worthy to note that Marc-Andre Fleury has been activated off of injured reserve by the Golden Knights. 25 games missed in total. He had that concussion in the 6-3 loss versus the Wings. He was placed on IR the next day. It's been 25 games. It's amazing that, and you ask any, Golden Knights player, and they'll say that Fleury is still the face of this franchise, and he's missed a majority of this year. And oh, by the way, they're almost at the top of their division. They're in second place right now over there in the West. I mean, it's just been an unbelievable run for the Vegas Golden Knights. How anybody is still doubting this team is far, far beyond me. I just can't understand it. But we do want to get into the Belmont Park redevelopment. We'll try and get our new pal, Randi Marshall, on the phone. We'll get her on the line here and ask her some questions. She was in the room that night covering the action. Let's go over to the line. Randi, are you there?
I am.
Hi, it's Anthony over the Hockey Talk Show. Thanks for coming on with us.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get right into the Belmont Park redevelopment. You guys have been covering this. You and Jim Bomback, by the way, phenomenal job. I just have to compliment you guys on what you've done. It's been great coverage so far.
Thank you. Not just us. There are a few others in the mix also, but thanks very much.
Wow. Are they really in the mix? You guys are top notch. I don't know.
No, I mean my colleagues, Robert Brodsky, Stephanie, who covered yesterday's events, etc. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Stephanie did a good job with it. I saw the article today. So let's talk about the redevelopment process. Now, they had this meeting. Was it yesterday or the day before?
The meeting was yesterday.
The meeting was yesterday. This is not a common thing when it comes to RFP, them having a meeting like this, right?
That's correct. This doesn't usually happen, and it's not really part of the RFP process. This was organized by local elected officials in a way just to get the community involved, to keep the community involved, to try to show them that they're a part of the process. But this wasn't organized by Empire State Development or by the state in general, and it's not a usual, typical part of the RFP process.
I'm curious then as to both parties agreed to go right along with it. They weren't.
Yeah.
Okay. They did.
Yeah. If you think about it, if they were in it to win it, so to speak, then it was in their best interest to do so, right? But yes, pretty much they were approached. They both agreed, and they both participated.
All right, Randi Marshall from Newsday is our guest on the Hockey Talk Show. Now, did the Empire State Development, I know you said they didn't really sponsor it, did they have any objections, or did they have to give like a blessing behind the scenes or anything like that?
I'm sure they had to give their blessing behind the scenes, and there were folks from Empire State Development present at the event yesterday, but they didn't participate, and I would argue that it was with their blessing, but not necessarily at all a factor for them necessarily in the process. They had clearly seen what we saw yesterday already, right? So there was nothing new for them. They were also, though, vetting the questions that were asked. People had to submit their questions in writing rather than just coming to a microphone yesterday, and that's because there are some things about this process that are still competitive in nature. The financing, the revenue share, all of that kind of thing. One party probably doesn't even know what the other party is proposing, and they want to keep it that way, at least until this is done. So there was some careful vetting going on of what was being asked. You'll notice that there were no questions asked about money, and that was clearly on purpose.
Right. All right, we're talking with Randi Marshall from Newsday about this Belmont Park redevelopment. Now, there's two groups involved. Obviously, the Islanders are involved, and the other group is attached to the New York Football Club, the soccer team.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
I understand there was another party involved. They've already dropped out, so we know that it's a two-horse race at this point, basically.
It is now a two-horse race. Ed Blumenfeld, who's a developer from Syosset, had pitched an idea, had filed his paperwork, but then backed out last week.
All right, so you were in the room when they released what they want to do for this site, which is pretty interesting. That, you know, after I had the time to really, by the way, I was obsessively following you and Jim on Twitter as it was happening.
It was fun.
Yeah, and it was cool to see the original drawings, and Newsday has them up on the website now. We're screenshotting them right now for the folks to see. But even though they're basically facing in different directions, they're essentially pretty similar. What was the reaction like in the room for the people that were there when these were being presented? Were there oohs and ahs, boos, or was it relaxed?
It was pretty quiet, which was good. It was different than sort of past experiences on some of this stuff. Islanders fans have been through a lot. I've been through a lot of these hearings with them, and sometimes the reaction can get kind of tense. It wasn't really yesterday. There were a couple of moments where there were some shout-outs, mostly from community members, I think, who were concerned about some of the lack of detail that they were getting at times or the like. But for the most part, people were pretty quiet, very respectful. Both parties got applause at the end of their presentations. I would argue that the room was intrigued and interested, but not necessarily, ready to start catcalling. There were no "Let's Go Islanders" chants, which I thought was good because that's not really the place for them. I think everybody treated it with the respect that it deserved, and that sort of started with the parties on the stage because they were clearly treating each other with respect, and they were in it just to be straightforward. There was no, it wasn't some pumped up rally, right? It was a straightforward presentation. You have to keep in mind, and I wrote about this a little bit today in our newsletter, that behind these two teams who are seeking to build there are two real estate juggernauts, Sterling on the side of the Islanders and related companies on the side of NYCFC. These two companies have been down this road before. They have done RFPs. They have done big developments. They have worked with the state. This isn't new to them. And while the community involvement might be different, they know what they're doing. And so they were very professional about everything they were doing yesterday. So it was pretty straightforward. It wasn't a free-for-all.
Yeah, and I got that. I got a sense of that too by some of the clips that I saw. That these were two well-respected groups really coming together to deliver their vision. Which, for me, and again, this is a hockey show. Obviously, we're going to side with the hockey people. Makes me cringe a little bit because if this is really a close race, I wonder how ESD is going to decide between these two proposals.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate question. There are differences between them, again, and there's a lot we don't know. If, one group is putting in a lot more money and offering a lot more revenue share to the state, that may make a difference. If one group's, package looks different beyond the details we saw yesterday, that'll make a difference. So there's some stuff that we don't know. The other piece of this that I think is important is one of the big differences here is that you're talking about a year-round arena versus a outdoor stadium. I do think that makes a difference. There are arguments on both sides, but fundamentally, one of the big things that I would say a lot of people want out of this, and that the state probably would want out of this is to turn that Long Island Railroad station into a full-time station. To do that, you need that to be a full-time destination. And so that would be one factor that I think is an interesting separator a bit. Although certainly NYCFC would argue, rightfully so, that the retail and the indoor soccer facility and some of the other things they proposed would be year-round. But the stadium itself won't be. So is that a factor? I don't know. But don't forget about the mass transit aspect of this. There are public improvements that a lot of people who may not side with hockey or soccer want to see here. And so the group that can deliver on those public improvements the most may, have a leg up as well.
Yeah, now, I mean,
that would be something I'd add in.
Again, and I don't know how much of the detailed proposal that we're actually privy to, but from what I understand, it's the Islanders' proposal, like you were alluding to, that really focuses more on that LIRR station than the other proposal.
They both did. They both talked about it, at least. I would say that the Sterling group seemed to indicate more of a willingness to sort of work with the MTA on that effort, whereas the language that came out of NYCFC was more of a we'd support that kind of effort. And maybe that was just me parsing words, but I did notice that. But again, we are not privy to those details, so I don't know. Both pitch the idea of increasing the utilization of that station, which is good. And both would require it because, as both teams noted yesterday, parking and traffic and all of that is going to be, an issue, certainly. So you're talking about adding a lot more traffic to an area that is usually trafficked just a few times a year. So that's going to change the mix as well. But both groups offered, community development efforts, parks and community resources and the like. I think it's going to come down to the details, but I have to say there wasn't a ton of daylight, and I was pretty impressed with sort of how much both of them showed up. They both really want this. Correction. I think they both portrayed themselves as really wanting this. I have heard mixed things in terms of how much behind the scenes NYCFC is looking at other sites and the like. I'm not sure this is the only site NYCFC is interested in. So whereas Belmont has been the only site that the Islanders say that they want. So is that a factor? I don't know. But there's a lot more that we don't know that sort of wasn't discussed, that was left unsaid yesterday. And I think that's where the decision will be made in those details. But they both showed up yesterday, and they both had really interesting, and I would say, to use a term that was even used by the protesters yesterday, real development was proposed yesterday. Good, interesting, meaningful development. And something's going to go there, and that's good. And if it's a hockey arena, that'll be good for Islander fans. And we should know soon-ish, as I like to say.
Yeah, Randi Marshall is here with us from Newsday. Means. I know. Mm-hmm. The vagueness of all of this.
Yes, there is some vagueness.
To be fair, though, and like I said, obviously we're on the Islander side here, but to be fair, though, yeah. it looks like the soccer proposal had a bit more retail. It seems like that entertainment retail area stretched farther down than what the Islanders were proposing.
So the difference on that is where they're doing it. The Islanders are actually proposing more square footage of retail. It was something like 435,000 compared to 400,000. But the difference is where they're going to place it. The Islanders proposal puts almost all the development on the north side of Hempstead Turnpike, and NYCFC spreads it out more and uses the southern side, connects them via pedestrian bridge. It sounds to me, judging by their proposals, that the Islanders are talking about leaving most of the southern side as parking, along with some community resources, community space. So I think it depends a little bit on sort of how you envision it, but that's mostly about location, not about the detail. They're both proposing, their arena/stadium plus 400,000 plus, square feet of retail. They have similar retail ideas even when they were asked specifically. Both of them mentioned food, restaurant type stuff, and then outlets. So they seem pretty similar on that front even. Their community uses are different. NYCFC proposes more outdoor park type space, whereas the Islanders team, Sterling, suggested, first of all, that they haven't even programmed it yet because they'd leave it up to the community. But secondly, that it seemed more, they called it an innovation center, which they gave examples like job training. So that sounds to me more of an indoor facility. So the uses might be different. But they both also seemed amenable to working with the community and figuring out what the community wanted for that space. Clearly, in both cases, the sports franchise is the centerpiece of whatever they're doing.
Right. And again, the only other advantage that the Islanders have outside of their sports franchise is the year-long use of it, which is an important factor. The other thing I noticed, too, is that the other big difference is the Islanders have a hotel in their proposal. Yes. Does that make a difference at all, do you think?
Yeah, I think everything makes a difference here. And certainly I would argue that a hotel is a good use of that space. It may weave a little bit more together. It will attract people to the space. Certainly, obviously, for the Islanders, it'll be ideal for their visiting team to stay there and visiting fans or what have you. But I think it will also generate more activity at the site, again, year-round activity at the site, which I think is interesting. It was interesting to me that NYCFC did not include a hotel or another entertainment use. But yeah, that's definitely a discernible difference between the two. That's one key factor that is in one plan and not in the other. So.
All right, Randi Marshall is with us from Newsday. Randi, you've been so generous with your time. One last question.
Sure.
I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I mean, I've heard some pretty crazy things in the Twitterverse and everywhere else, and I just want to throw this by you. You tell me if you've heard the same or not. But from what I understand, this whole development is part of a bigger plan to close Aqueduct and expand the casino there and have a little bit more of a year-round operation at Belmont itself as far as the racetrack goes. Have you heard those sort of rumblings?
Sure. It's not so crazy.
Okay.
There's long been talk of wanting to winterize Belmont, make it a year-round track. And there has long been talk about wanting to move the horses from Aqueduct. I don't think it's really part of this right now, but depending on how this plays out, I would not be surprised if that's a step down the line. It's still a little ways down the line, but it is not just rumor, and it's certainly not, it's within the realm of possibility, certainly. I would not be surprised if we end up moving in that direction. So, time will tell. That's not an immediate thing, and that's not directly something that would involve either the Islanders or NYCFC, but they'd be a player, whoever wins this bid, would be a player in whatever else happens at the site. And it's clear that whatever they're doing, they want to complement Belmont. And the idea of making Belmont year-round it could be part of that. Could be part of the plan to make the entire space, right, a year-round, really significant entertainment district of sorts. Not absurd. not definitive, but not absurd.
Okay, good. All right, and now if you had to throw, you could just flip a coin here, but if you had to put a winner and what you felt maybe had a little bit of an edge, or where do you think it's going to go? You have any opinions?
This I will not do.
Okay.
I again, and I said this even on Twitter today, I'm not privy to enough of the detail behind the scenes or in their proposals to be able to even make that judgment call. There's too many X factors. And, one of the X factors is that Governor Cuomo, it's an election year, right? So who knows what that means? But the other factors, financing and all of that, are part of this mix, and I just don't know where all of that will lead us. Time will tell. I do think that they're clearly moving forward at a faster pace than I anticipated initially, which is good. And the fact that even this event occurred and that clearly folks seem ready to move forward and both really are hopeful and seem ready to go. They're both, again, backed by real estate companies of significance that know what they're doing. All of that bodes well that whatever is built there will actually be built there, which is a far better position than we were in a few years ago when we waited 4 years and never got an answer to the RFP. I don't expect that will happen again. I think we're going to get an answer sooner rather than later. And, I don't have any inside information on who's going to get this thing, but time will tell. And, clearly while both parties are sort of in this thing with everything they've got, there is a difference here between the way that the Islanders have sort of voiced themselves over time in terms of really wanting this and basically saying we're all in for Belmont, and NYCFC, which has been a little quieter behind the scenes and clearly is looking at other sites. Their fans don't seem completely set on Belmont as the answer. So that, that's going to play in as well. I would bet, but I'm not going to put odds on this one. Save that for something else. I'm not a sports bettor, but we'll know when you guys do, and we'll keep you up to date as much as we can. And it was it's an interesting mix, but certainly clearly. The Islanders, their team knows what they're doing. So does the NYCFC team, but, clearly the team of folks who were up there yesterday have done this before. They've been around this and they know what they're doing, and it's an interesting mix of folks, given the Sterling folks, Scott Malkin's people, and MSG all in the mix together. So that makes it more interesting also.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, this is one of the bigger, plays that we've seen in the New York area in quite some time, to have the Mets and the Rangers and the Islanders all sort of pooling together behind the scenes in their business interests to make this happen. I don't know if we've ever seen anything like that before.
Not quite like this.
Not recently.
But,
yeah.
No, but it'll be interesting, and it bodes well. You got to hope that it means that if development's possible at Belmont, maybe other development will be possible at a place like Willets Point in Queens, where Sterling is also trying to build. And you got to hope that as some of this comes through, it'll mean that other pieces will start to fall into place. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully that means that there's a good site for the Islanders, and hopefully it means that if NYCFC wants a site of their own, that if it's not Belmont, it's they find the site that they want also. I think there's pieces to move, and I kind of don't know how that'll play out at all, but hopefully everybody will end up finding what they want out of this in the end. But who knows? Time will tell, and there's a lot of unknown here. I do hope, though, that the community, which has expressed some concern here, maybe felt a little bit better yesterday, because there's clearly an effort by both of these developers to not just build a hockey arena or a soccer stadium, and both of these developments go beyond that, which I think is good. So
that is really good. Yeah, and the retail and the restaurants, I think, will be good for that area too.
Yeah.
To have that so close by.
I wish I could tell y'all that, tell you and your listeners that I was sure and this was a done deal and you have nothing to, worry about or whatever. I'm not a betting woman on this one, and I'm not going to take a side. I don't know, but it'll be interesting. So keep your eye on it. All
right, we definitely will be following you on Twitter and through Newsday, and appreciate your time tonight, Randi.
No problem. Take care.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, there goes Randi Marshall, nice enough to give us some time. Wonderful, and a great reporter. Has been following along on this saga, if you will, on where the New York Islanders are going to wind up playing. Your thoughts at 631-438-1768, even more so in the Twitter, in the YouTube and Facebook chats. I see a couple of guys checking in there. Joe, how's it going, man? I don't know if the Islanders make a trade this year. I don't know if that happens. I think they are, I think they're going to add as the season goes along. Like we've talked about in the past, Garth Snow is holding on to a couple of the extra draft picks here. And obviously there's a winning team, and obviously you want to have depth down the end. If there's any injuries, there'll certainly be a move. I could certainly see him spending that extra draft pick coin on, bringing in somebody so that they're not without a major piece. I definitely think the Islanders add at the deadline, but we'll have to wait and see where that is. I think it's pretty obvious that they'll do something. As far as this arena goes, I think it was pretty interesting what Randi said. She brought up a good point, something that I really wasn't all that focused on, which was that the soccer club, the NYCFC, does have some other options, or maybe they have other options. None of this is really definite. But maybe they do have other options. And you have to think, if you're the Empire State Development, New York State, that might be the best. You may almost give it to the Islanders by default because, here's a situation where the Islanders really have no other choice. They really don't have another place to go. They've said, and the league has said, the Coliseum is absolutely not an option. Obviously, Barclays is not an option. Willets Point, which Randy mentioned, that has been, constantly a thought of, can we redevelop that area just outside of Citi Field? That hasn't been able to go. And there's a lot of eminent domain, I think, that has to happen with that, which has been a big part of the process there. Because, the thing is, there's a lot of great chop shops over there. And if you get rid of those, then how are you going to buy a stolen car stereo in New York City? It's a way of life. It's as New York as that torch, that young lady holds in the harbor. I mean, it's just as New York. You got to be able to go and get a cheap car stereo that somebody stole out of a similar car of yours. And if we don't have Willets Point, I don't know if we'll ever be able to do that. But that being said, maybe Willets Point is something for NYCFC to think about farther down the line. By the way, they're playing in Yankee Stadium right now. So is that ideal for business operations? Maybe not, but it's Yankee Stadium. I mean, it's kind of an awesome place to be playing your sporting events. I don't really remember too many teams outside of the New York Yankees that were able to call Yankee Stadium home. Certainly not in the last 50 years or so. Probably I think the Giants shared maybe in the 40s or something. I feel like something like that may have happened, but I could be just dreaming that up. But from a state standpoint and a development standpoint, like I said, maybe this does go to the Islanders by default, because they might be thinking in the back of their mind, well, we can put the Islanders here and we're not really in any sort of a threat to lose NYCFC. We'll find another spot for them to be. Whereas the Islanders really don't have many options. As I said, in Queens, Willets Point is kind of it. Obviously, it didn't work in Brooklyn. I do think the Islanders would do better in Queens, although you're still essentially barking up the same exact tree. I think there's more Islander fans in Queens than there are in Brooklyn, but not many more. They mostly reside in Nassau and Suffolk. So to put them back into Nassau County, I think makes the most sense. So this is, I feel, sort of the last dash for Islander fans, or for this franchise, and have a spot. If you have another team like NYCFC that does have another option, it would make more sense to file the Islanders in here and move NYCFC off to wherever else they wind up going. Again, and I'm not all that familiar with NYCFC, and we'll bring up their proposal for you here on the screen. I don't really know a lot about them other than, I know they play at Yankee Stadium, so I really don't know where a lot of their fans center. Much like the Islanders, who are a New York team and are regional, but they are sort of more for Nassau and Suffolk County. Like, I know the breakdown of where their fans are. I'm not really sure where the NYCFC fans reside. I do know, the other part of this issue is, a lot of people are talking about it. Well, soccer versus hockey, and hockey has slipped and not as popular as it once was, and soccer is growing. That might all be true, and I do believe it is growing in the States. But again, as we've seen here with some of the figures that just came out from the National Hockey League itself, they are growing. Maybe not growing as fast as soccer is, but that doesn't necessarily give NYCFC the win on this proposal here. To break it down here, you can see it's a little hard to see, but we'll take a look. This is the NYCFC proposal. Belmont Park right in there. The MTA station over here, existing Belmont open space. This is the paddock. I've been here many a times, by the way, in the paddock. Really nice area. If you're in the New York, Long Island area and you've never taken in a day at Belmont Park, this is an awesome spot to do so. They got a lot of picnic areas, a lot of families back here. They do a lot of family events, music, those blow up balloons and the big blow up castles, the bouncy castles the kids can do. There's always stuff like that going on in that area. It's a great day. You have a picnic, you play the ponies a little bit. It's a nice little outing. So that area stays put in both proposals. Obviously, the stadium would have a little bit of a wider footprint than an arena, 26,000 seater in the stadium. I believe the arena is proposed at 18,000, which I think is a lot for the area. The Coliseum at its height was only 16. 18, by the way, is up there with the bigger boys in the National Hockey League. I think about the Garden. I think about Montreal, Florida, even in that upper 18 sort of seating capacity. So a pretty big arena, bigger than what the Islanders are used to. Remember, they downgraded a little bit to go into Barclays. So that'll be interesting to see if they could fill that on a regular basis. I don't think on a regular basis, but certainly in a playoff run, it'd be good to have those extra 1,000, 1,500 seats as far as revenue goes. As Randy pointed out, a nice little pedestrian walkway here over Hempstead Turnpike into the 400,000 square feet of retail and entertainment space, plus 1,500 parking spaces. I believe some of these are underground, if I'm not mistaken, if I read that correctly. And I thought that was a pretty good move. I like the overall layout a little bit better as far as the retail and entertainment spaces go by the NYCFC. I thought they did a nicer job. Throw the parking underneath, keep up top very green, a lot of stores. Obviously looks like a bigger space. When you go back over and you look at the Islanders' proposal, their retail village is smack up against the arena. And of course, they have some more room to put it there because it's not a 26,000 seat, outdoor stadium. The arena obviously going to have a little bit of a smaller footprint. You could see it right there, right up against where the Cross Island Parkway would be. And of course, Hempstead Turnpike. Interesting too, they're on Hempstead Turnpike where the Coliseum was too. You follow Hempstead Turnpike down, and you'll eventually hit the Nassau Coliseum. It'll take you forever that way, but you'll do it. And they are proposing a pedestrian tunnel that goes underneath Hempstead Turnpike and then filling all this area, which is the retail and entertainment for the NYCFC, with parking spaces. So anybody worried about having ample parking will have that. Keeping everything north of Hempstead is important. You'll hear that a lot during this debate, and that's because over here you're looking at all residential homes, The other thing that actually we didn't have time to get into with Randy is, and I think it's of importance when you're talking about this arena issue, is arena versus, your outdoor stadiums. As far as noise goes, stadiums are more noisy. I mean, I read the tweets between Randy and Jim where they said, they're gonna put things in place to manage the noise. I mean, aside of big trees, I don't know what that is. I don't know how you quell the noise of an open outdoor stadium. You're going to hear that throughout the course of a game, whereas an arena, you're not going to hear anything other than, the parking lot exiting and entering, but that's going to be common for both. So both are going to have to deal with that. And by the way, and I like what Randy said about the neighborhood and making sure they're protected and they're getting something for them, whether they're a sports fan or not, which I think you do get with the village, the retail village and the restaurants and all that kind of stuff. But the other thing too is this is, I want to just give the folks over there in Belmont a little bit of credit. Like, this is an area that deals with the Belmont Stakes. I mean, if you've never been, you're talking about 100,000 people just flooding this area, and just everywhere, and I get that it's one Saturday out of the year. But Belmont does run a whole bunch, so there are some other events there. So they are used to, this sort of noise and parking and all that. Now, it's pretty easy because of the access that you have from the Cross Island. Not that many people. I mean, I've been to Belmont a ton. I don't think I've ever really driven down Hempstead Turnpike all that much. You're kind of just right off the parkway and smack into the parking lot. So it looks like this will be a similar setup for them. But again, I want to give credit to the people in that area that, they can handle literally, as far as congestion goes, on one of the worst sporting events that we have. I mean, it's certainly one of the biggest. People don't really talk about this all that much, but it is one of the biggest that we see in this area. I mean, like hundreds of thousands of people. Like, I think it's 140 something thousand people go. I might be off on that, but I know it's more than a football game. It's a crazy amount of people, the Belmont Stakes, especially when you have a Triple Crown on the line. Then it swells to absolute amazingness. So you'll hear a lot about people talking about they kept everything north of Hempstead Turnpike, and that's because a lot of the housing is all along these areas. So it makes sense to put community space down here, which they have both done. There's some community space down here. Actually, these are indoor soccer facilities, again, which would be used by the community, of course, and a lot of just park area, which I think is important. which you're going to want if you're living in this area. You're going to want a nice park to go to and a nice, bar and grill to walk to and enjoy a beer and a burger. Even if you're not partaking in any of the sports, it's just kind of nice to have those neighborhood areas. Drop that bass. Islanders make me cringe. Mike Milbury ruined the Islanders. I will one day share some of my Mike Milbury stories. I worked with the franchise while Mike was there. I honestly thought he got a bum rap most of his career, but in the end, couldn't really get the Islanders over the hump and was let go at around the right time. Maybe a year or two longer, but he might have gotten a bonus year in there of sticking around. But I always loved about Mike Milbury? The passion on that guy. Super, super passionate dude. But I have a lot of good Mike Milbury stories, even one where Mike came to my rescue, and that was nice of him to do that. We'll share that with you guys as the Hockey Talk Show continues to grow. But really big, huge, super thanks over to Randi Marshall for coming on the program here and hanging with us. Super nice reporter, does the editorial board. Queen's Mommy, you see her thing right there. Follow her. She's at Randi Marshall. It's at Randi Marshall. Super nice for her to come on board and share some of her thoughts with us on this ongoing saga, if you will, of where the Islanders are going to wind up, which is certainly a big deal to Islander fans everywhere. And not only that, but it really is a big deal to the National Hockey League. We talked about why Seattle has been fast tracked and why the NHL is trying to get there, looking at the league's footprint, and where they are and TV money and all that. It's important that the National Hockey League has 3 teams in the metropolitan area. It is super important, they need that for advertising. It's just a bigger deal. Even if the Islanders aren't drawing or whatever the case is, it's just really, really important to have, Drop that bass. Jeremy Roenick is the man. I got to tell you, I love Roenick and Milbury together on the NHL broadcast. I think they do a phenomenal job. I really do. I like what they do on the NBC broadcast together. I think it works really well. Yeah, it's funny. I just was watching that footage of Milbury smacking the guy with the shoe the other day. I think I was going through YouTube videos and it was like the best hockey fights in the stands thing. That's why I started watching hockey fights in stands, which honestly disgusted me, and I switched it off. And then it was the times that hockey players went into the stands or something crazy like that, and it was Ty Domi squirting a water bottle over the boards in the penalty box, and the penalty box glass was low. I forget. I think they were in Toronto. The glass was low, and the actual fan literally hopped over, and Ty Domi pulled him into the box. I mean, just craziness. And of course, that famous footage of Milbury just hitting the guy with his own shoe. Daniel just got off work. Can you start over? Here's the great news about the Hockey Talk Show, Daniel. As soon as we stop, boom, thing is available for you to watch whenever you want on Facebook or YouTube. By the way, you missed Randi Marshall, who is covering the Islanders and the Belmont Park referendum request for proposal, RFP, and she was brilliant. She gave us a ton of great information, so definitely watch the beginning of this or download the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and the TuneIn Radio app. It was a great bit of information coming from Randi. And we'll link her Twitter below and some of the articles that her and her team over at Newsday have been putting together because they've done a really, really nice job. By the way, if I had to pick a winner on this one, and I'm going to do this based on just clarity of how high resolution their proposals are, I'm going to go with the Islanders. Look, you can at least read this. This is a little bit harder to read. This is much nicer, I think. So if we're going to put it on something as ridiculous as that, that's what we're going to put it on right there. That's what we're going to put it on right there. Sorry to hate on the Islanders, bro. We all got our opinion. No, it's cool, man. It's cool. Hockey Talk Show is for every hockey fan. We talk about all the teams. and we make sure to cover everything. And I make sure to not let my bias come across here too much. I do believe, however, though, that the Islanders are the right move for the Empire State Development who are going to make this decision. And now that I've seen the plans, it is pretty close and it is pretty tight. But, even in just kind of listening to Randy talk tonight, makes me feel like if there are other options for NYCFC, the play here might be to give this one to the Islanders. Even if, let's say, for instance, they didn't like their proposal all that much, which we don't know what their feelings are. But even if they weren't crazy about it, I mean, looking at this from a state standpoint, you can literally keep both teams. NYCFC has other options. The Islanders have run out of them. So this would obviously be the move. I also think it's pretty interesting, too, that it is going back to the 18,000 seater thing. It is going to become sort of not a competitor to the Garden, because obviously the Garden is involved in this with the Oakview group here. But it is going to be another option for, touring artists. I was going to say the circus, but they don't even really tour that much anymore, right? All that kind of thing, just, concerts and, those dirt bike shows that they have, and, Disney on Ice. It's going to be an interesting option. You can only put 16,000 in the Coliseum. To have the ability to pack an 18,000 seat arena would really be interesting, especially for a concert. That might swell up to 19, depending on what the floor situation is, if it's seats or standing room. So it would be really interesting to see what becomes of that. I find it really interesting that the Garden is fully behind an arena this big, because that was always one of the things that differentiated them, was the fact that you could just flat out pack more people into Madison Square Garden. And now if both of them are around the same, again, the Barclay is not as big. I don't believe the Rock is as big, but I'd have to go and look that up. As far as the metropolitan area arenas go, this would be, I think, the biggest next to Madison Square Garden. Liz, now New York State just has to allow more sports betting and everyone will be in business. Boy, do I think we're getting there one day. I think that day is not too far. I mean, we got a casino every 5 minutes now in New York. I don't know if sports betting is that far behind. Here on Long Island, they just put one in the Long Island Marriott in Islandia, which is in Suffolk County, not that far from where I am. Really a step in the direction of, we don't need, it doesn't need to be on an Indian reservation anymore. That if they go with this video terminal thing, and it was one thing to put it at Aqueduct, it's another thing to put it in the middle of, the suburban areas here on the island. So that was an interesting thing. And I think it's doing well. I think it's good. But, I also think that our allowance and acceptance of betting is definitely becoming more apparent than it used to be just a few years ago. I also like that Randy chimed in a little bit on hearing the rumblings that I have been hearing, that Aqueduct will be closed down as a racetrack and will be, brought into more of a bigger casino. As far as casinos go, with the video terminal ones, I think that Aqueduct is one of the bigger revenue casinos in the country. So to expand that seems to make a lot of sense, and winterizing Belmont makes a lot of sense. So to have that with the hotel and the retail village and everything else, and this could really be a nice little epicenter for the people of Long Island who are just looking for a cool place to go and hang out and get food and take in some entertainment and all the rest. The shame of it is, this really could have been done where the Coliseum was. They always wanted to modernize that area and popularize that area. Is popularize the word? I don't think so. And they were just never able to get it done. And I don't know if it was necessarily people trying to keep it out as much as it was the politicians and not getting enough on their end, to make it happen. Long Island, unfortunately, has a long laundry list of really bad politicians. And the ones who let the Islanders walk to Brooklyn were certainly one of them. We'll put all this great stuff from Newsday into the description below. A lot of Islander talk tonight. And to wrap this up, I hate to be blindly hopeful here, but I do think it goes well for the Islanders. And I think this has got to be exciting for Islander fans in general because, you look at these plans and the ideas, and it's going to be enticing for players to play in this area, especially guys like John Tavares who like to be on the edge of that spotlight. You're with the Rangers, you're under a microscope all the time. You're with the Islanders, you have a little bit more freedom to roam around and live your life and still, take advantage of being in the number one media market in the country. So I think this all bodes well for the Islanders. You heard Randy say we don't know when the announcement is going to come on who gets this land, but it should be soon. She said that she was surprised at how fast it's going through. The same. I didn't think this would be moving along as quickly, and it has. It's two things I was wrong about. I didn't think the NHL would move along so fast on expansion to Seattle. They came right out the next day. There was Gary Bettman waving the Seattle flag, like, let's do it. Let's go. Start taking applications or application. But it looks like that's happening, and it looks like, the Empire State Development is going to move on this quickly and, make it happen. Eddie V on YouTube, Guar at the new rink would be so cool. They have enough seats now for Guar at 18,000. That is a good Guar amount capacity when you think about it. Hockey talk show on this Monday. I think we're going to kind of leave it there. It was a good night of talk. A lot of Islanders, a lot of thoughts on the arena. I do think the aqueduct thing does make a difference on this. I think it'll speed up the process. They're going to want to get that casino in there quickly. Randy said that these proposals didn't really have much to do with that. But I think that maybe that is one of the reasons why speed is becoming a factor here, because the quicker they can make that transition, the quicker they can then, build out aqueduct and expand that. And this is a nice little caveat in there, especially with the MTA and that LARR station becoming a year-round thing. That'll be a big deal for all the horse race fans and everything else. And having the hotel there and everything would be phenomenal. The hotel, by the way, would be a great move for visiting teams. I know that they like that. One of the great parts about the Coliseum was the fact that they had that Marriott right there across the way that all the teams stayed at, and they were able to walk right under the tunnel and, walk right into the arena and play. I know teams really, really enjoyed that. In fact, that was one of the reasons why the Islanders struggled to gain free agents, because when you came into Long Island, you flew in, then you went there, and all you saw was parking lot and two buildings in the Coliseum. It looked awful. It looked awful. But for the most part, it was convenient for the players. They kind of like that. They like having that closeness. I don't know if visiting teams are as envious of the Barclays situation. Getting around Brooklyn, not as easy, but they travel with bus and all that. They make it work. But certainly having that hotel right there would be incredibly, incredibly convenient for them. As far as the hockey action goes for tonight, Isles and Caps, they'll get underway in about 5 minutes or so. Rangers at home taking on Dallas tonight. Should be a good one. I like that matchup together. I'll take the Rangers in that one. Rangers have been playing really good lately. Caps and Isles, you can flip a coin, man. That's going to be a tough one. That is going to be tough. Colorado and Pittsburgh, you can give that one to the defending Stanley Cup champs. Florida Panthers and Detroit Red Wings. Here's a battle of just middle to the lower pack of the league right now. Give me Florida. Give me Florida in that one. Winnipeg and Vancouver should be an awesome game. 8 o'clock game there if you're thinking about catching one. And then Carolina and Anaheim are the only late game tonight for a 10 o'clock start. And there's a whole slate of games for tomorrow. Tuesday's usually a pretty busy game night for the National Hockey League. Eddie likes Dallas over the Rangers 5-3. Yeah? You think so? I don't know. Rangers have been playing good. Is it Lundqvist back in the net? Is he back in, or is it Andre, the Bruce Springsteen fan? Dallas Stars on a 3-game losing streak. Rangers are hot at home. The game summary has Pavlik on the head of it, so that makes me think that he might be getting the start over Lundqvist. I don't know, man. 5-3. Drop that base. Carolina 5, Anaheim 1. Boy, that Anaheim team is beat up, man. They are beat up. Really, really tough. I like the Rangers tonight. I'm sticking with the Rangers. Carolina's been hot too. I like them on the road in Anaheim. I'll take that one. I'll go along with you. Drop that base. I like the Rangers tonight against Dallas. I don't know. I think Dallas comes out of this with a 4-game losing streak, and the Rangers continue to be hot at home. Rangers are they're 12-5-2 at home. That's a damn good record. 7-3 in their last 10. Rangers are a tough team to play against right now. They are no doubt a really, really tough team to play against. It's certainly the opposite of how they were when they started this season. So we'll wait and see. I'll definitely be watching Isles Caps, and I'll be flipping over to the Ranger game to see how they do. Back here with you guys tomorrow on the Hockey Talk Show. Possibility of getting an earlier time slot this week, maybe floating back into that 3 or 4 o'clock hour. I don't know. But that might be later on in the week. We might be back here at 6 o'clock tomorrow. But either way, we'll post it up on the Facebook and YouTube channels. So make sure you guys are following along. Like the page. Don't just like it, though. Follow. And on YouTube, make sure you guys are subscribed, but also hit that bell so you get the notifications for when we're going live. And remember, on YouTube especially, all you guys that are watching, thank you for that. Hit that like button. We'll get, it helps in the YouTube algorithm if you hit the like button to continue to help the Hockey Talk Show receive the massive growth that we've had so far right out of the gate here. I do appreciate that stuff as always. All right, enjoy the hockey action tonight. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 5 live. Remember, all 5 days of the week, we're live here on the Hockey Talk Show.